Today I want to talk to you about one of the most incredible books you will ever read. It was written 2,500 years ago, and it's been mentioned and referenced over and over and over again. But usually when it's mentioned for war, for business, for politics. I want to take a different spin on this. And so what I'm going to do in the next 10 or 11 videos, and I'm going to make this a series, is I'm going to take the ancient script, the famous book, Art of War, but I'm going to tie it to math as a strategy. And so this first video is going to be the foreword to the book. And there's a few translations out there, but I'm using James Clavelle's translation. And so if you ever want to get the book to follow along with what I'm talking about, get James Clavelle's The Art of War. Today we're going to talk about the foreword for The Art of War that James wrote. And throughout the book, as famous and as popular and as powerful as the book is, there's three overarching principles that drive each chapter and the rest of the book. So the first is know thyself. And I'm using the quote on one of the old Greek quotes that was engraved on the stone, know thyself. The second is know your enemy. And the third overarching principle, which we'll break down in later videos and chapters, but again, this is just a foreword, this is this high-level summary, is only fight battles you can win. Now, as we get deeper and deeper into this book, and I tie it into your math scores, your math tests, your math class, your teachers, your surroundings, all of it, these three principles will be your guidebook, they'll be your compass for how you understand the book first, because this book is so damn good, it can be used in all areas of your life. So when I tie it to math, you're probably going to see other areas in your life where you could use this and conquer life. So we'll cover these three principles. For this video, we're just going to cover the three overarching principles, and then I'll make another video, one per each chapter. Now, The Art of War, as I said, written 2,500 years ago, it was a strategy guide when you're fighting the battles of your life. Strategy, by the way, is higher than tactics. So most people think at the tactics level, I'm going to do, in math class, I'm going to try to find a hack or shortcut, and that's great, but tactics are really an element of strategy. Now, if you go into any business, any team, any big organization where a lot of money or a lot of competition is happening, the highest paid or most important people is not this, it's this. This is where the bread and butter is made. And this is another reason why this book is incredibly powerful for your life. Now that we've gotten the basics out, I want to cover these three principles before we close out the foreword portion for this video. First is know thyself. In any battle, and for math, you may have a team of people that help you. You may have friends, your parents, or it may just be you. You have to know thyself. And what that means is you have to take an inventory of your assets, your strengths, and your weaknesses or your liabilities. If you can't be honest with yourself about this, you're going to struggle, not just in math, but in life. And the people that advance the most in any field, I don't care if we're talking about sports, business, politics, all of it, classrooms, all of it. The first test you got to pass is figure out what you're strong at and what you're weak at. Now, down the road, you may take some of your weaknesses and turn them into strengths, but if you don't identify your weaknesses, you are going to be at a severe disadvantage. And I'll get into that in later videos, but this is the point of know thyself. Part of knowing thyself is who or what in your battle with math class can help you. And number two, we'll get into in a bit who your enemy is. But take an inventory of your assets or strengths and your liabilities. And you need to be brutally honest with yourself. And sometimes for this, you may need to ask other people an honest opinion. And the conversation goes something like this. I'm trying to get better at X, but I also want to know what I'm weak at. Can you explain to me or lay out some things that I'm either not good at or can improve? Maybe there's something that you're doing average or poorly, but you have potential to get better. You need somebody, we're not talking about yes men who pump you up at all times. You need somebody in your life who is going to call you on your BS or point out your weak spots. And I'm not saying put you down and constantly give you negative criticism, but give you an honest inventory of where you're lacking for a certain skill. You need at least one person like that in your life. Let's cover number 2 overarching principle of the art of war. Know your enemy. In the book, Sun Tzu talks a few times about if you know thyself but don't know the enemy, you'll lose as many battles as you win. But if you know yourself and you know your enemy, you're going to win most, if not all, the time. Now, in math class, this is the art of war for math, who is your enemy? Some of you instantly will say math tests, right? Another one, math anxiety. This, by the way, is now a diagnosable condition. That's how bad it's gotten. But notice the enemy, we're talking about things. Math tests, math anxiety. What are we missing here? And you may need to dig a little deeper, but who's our enemy? Sometimes, if we have a poor teacher, and for those of you that have a good math teacher, then ignore this point. But from the 7.2 million students that came through my site last year, this is a common occurrence. Your math teacher. What's another enemy of your progress? Your environment. And we'll get into that in a minute, but I want to lay these out so you could see where this whole video series is going. Because if you absorb this book, and by the way, I've read it 10 times, and I still learn something every time. That's how good this book is. If you have even a small library, this book should be a staple. I mean, you should read it at least once a year, minimum. So you got math test, math anxiety, environment, math teacher. What else? Grading system. Not for everybody, but some classes grade on the curve. So what that means is you and a friend could be in algebra class, right? You have equal skills. So if you both take the test, just you and your friend, you both get an 80% on it. But now let's say in the middle of the year, your friend goes in class B, you are in class A. Now, when your friend's in class B, they have average students. So when they grade on the curve, your friend is on this side of the bell curve. But you get dropped into a class of wizards and geniuses. So if you would have been in class B, you're over here. Guess where you're at now? Over here. So to know your enemy is know how the class is graded. If it's graded on a curve, you're going to need to modify your strategy. If you're in a classroom of geniuses or smarter kids, you're going to need to figure out who the top 4, 5, 6 people are and figure out a way to get in that bunch, because once they make the cutoff for the top few percent, everybody else starts getting pushed down the hill. If you don't get graded on a curve, great, that's fine. Your strategy should still be figure out who the top few 5, 10% in the class are and figure out what they're doing. Because even though you may be friends and even though they're not your enemy, maybe you don't hang out, in the game of grades and college funding where the higher grades you get, you may get more money. In a way, that's your competition. That's your competition. And so you need to figure out, I'm going to close this door here. You need to figure out who is above your ability, who's at your ability, and who's beneath your ability. And your goal line should be figure out how you can get in the top 10 or 15%. And we'll cover this more in later videos. So this is know your enemy. These are 5 of them, and I'm sure we'll come across a few later, but important to know how everything works, not just things, places, but people too. So think about all those things that could hinder your progress. Third overarching principle in the art of war: only fight battles you can win. And I think the exact quote is, only seek battle after victory has been won. What's that mean? You're in algebra class, right? And you get the syllabus. And when you look at the syllabus, let's say there's 25 concepts. You immediately know 5. You've either seen them before or you can grasp them right away. But in the 3rd week after a class starts, you hit concept 6 and you have no clue. What should be your strategy? Should you start looking at chapter 6? No. You should go back to 1 through 5, master it, and then and only then should you attempt chapter 6 or concept 6. Why? Because math is a cumulative subject. And what that means is each level you climb requires mastery or a pretty darn good knowledge of the principles and building blocks below it. So if you do bad in basic math, you will never have a shot at algebra, calculus, pre-algebra, pre-calculus, discrete math, all of it. It's impossible. So you need to have the building blocks before you go up the ladder. That's one battle you can fight. Second is, if you are grading on the curve and you're in a class full of geniuses, you're going to need to figure that out, because unless you can get in the top 10, 15%, you're fighting a battle you can't win. And I don't know if you could change classes or figure out a way to have the geniuses help you so you can move up in the class, but you need to identify your competition. Because if you think about an average basketball player that suddenly has to play Michael Jordan, that is not a battle that they can win. It's silly, it's pointless to fight that battle. They should go back and play other players at their level or maybe a little better, because maybe they lose to somebody that's a little better than them, but the knowledge and wisdom they gain will help them to eventually beat that person. So that's one of the lessons in only fight battles you can win. Second, only fight battles you can win. I'll give you a scenario. You're in college or you're in high school. I shouldn't use high school, but you're of legal drinking age, right? And everybody there's a big party tonight, right? But the problem is there's a big math test tomorrow. And all your friends are asking you, why don't you come out with us? Everybody cool is going to be there. It's going to be a great party. So many people are going to be dancing, having a good time. Don't worry about that math test tomorrow. You'll do fine. Well, here's the problem. Suppose you studied pretty well for the test, and then you decide to go to the party. If you have drinks, if you stay out late, if you eat a bunch of bad food, I'll put too many snacks, what happens? Brain power drops, lack of sleep. If you do drink, that's going to throw off your brain power, your cognitive ability. So you're already putting yourself in the hole. Maybe if you would have fought this battle with a good diet, lots of sleep, and no alcohol, you would have crushed the test. But now you've hindered yourself. And by no means am I telling you not to have a social life. What I'm telling you is, if you're going up against either a tough test or a class full of people that are at a certain level, and you need to be on your best physical and mental plane, but then you go on and do all this, that may not be a battle you can fight the next day. Not well, anyway. So that's another example of only fight battles you can win. Now, there's a couple examples of this in the military, which we can pull over into the world of math. There's a book called The Military Art of People's War, and it's by a general in Vietnam when America and Vietnam were engaged in war. And if you're younger than, if you weren't around when this happened, you can go on Google and check it out, just read about the Vietnam War. But the point is, you can argue the politics or you can argue who was the aggressor, but the fact of the matter is, no matter what side of the spectrum you fall on, Vietnam had one strategy. US has a superior military, way more troops, way more supplies, lot more money. How did Vietnam hold their own versus the US in that war? And the answer is, they only attacked weak points. Weak or undefended points. Now, that's a quick message in war because I want to bring this back to math. Throughout your life, you're going to fight certain battles. And I'm not talking about physical punching or fighting. Hopefully you can avoid all that. But battles for jobs, battles for better positions in school, battles for friends and networking, all that. This lesson here for math and war and all that applies throughout all of our lives. And I'm not saying don't take risks, but only fight battles you can win. And more importantly, only attack weak or undefended locations. What does that mean? We're going to go back to the textbook. So for instance, you have an algebra test or a stats test tomorrow. And let's say you skipped all the partying and you're in peak physical and mental condition. What is the next weak point you can attack? Well, are you more comfortable studying on your own, or do you get more validation studying in a group? And if you're a group studier, then you need to start building the relationships early in the math class to be around people you could study with in the group. On the flip side of that, if you enjoy quiet and solitude like me, you need to find a room in your house or a place to go where noise is canceled or limited, distractions are limited, your phone is off, and there's nothing on the wall or the environment to take you off your game. Because where I'm going to go back to here, environment matters. So you could take the same student in the same class with the same textbook, the same mindset, same good diet, same everything. You can take them out of a loud, and let's say they're like me, they like quiet and solitude. You take them out of a semi-loud environment where maybe their brothers or sisters are running around, or there's music blaring in the background, or their friends are texting them to come out. And if you shut all that off and put them in an environment, here we go again, that supports their study habits and cognitive abilities, you're now fighting battles you can win. So what I'm getting at is all this stuff: environment, the grading system, your peers, your teacher, all that stuff. I'll give you another example, and I'm going to give a talk about this probably next year. But there is a girl I know who was an A student in algebra. Just whizzed through the class. Halfway through the school year, her mom gets promoted, gets a new job, and they have to relocate. They pack all their stuff up, go to the new state. The daughter enrolls in the same algebra class. It's the same girl, same algebra class halfway through the year. Within a few weeks, she is an eyelash away from failing. Now the question is why? It's the same girl who was getting an algebra, A in algebra in her old neighborhood. It's the same course, the same textbook, basically the same course. What's changed? And the answer is the teacher. And so the problem was they switched over to what's called Common Core method of math. And if you don't know this, you can Google it. But essentially, Common Core uses a different method to solve problems. She was used to traditional method that her parents used, and she excelled extremely well at that. But once she used Common Core, she would use her method to get the answer, but the teacher demoted her grades because she didn't use the Common Core method to get to the right answer. Who is the enemy in this situation? Right here. Is that a battle she can win? maybe with the right tutor. What is the better answer for either attack undefended positions, where she was the star in her old class, or fight battles you can win? The tutor's an answer, but not the best one. Can she change math teachers? Because we know she got an A in algebra in her old class, same subject, same class. Can she change math teachers, or can somebody intervene for her and make the argument that, you know what, we're getting the right answer? And in a job, which the point of math class, by the way, is not to just learn how the universe works, but how you can excel in your career. Your boss doesn't care how the job gets done. They only care if the job's done right. So can somebody intervene for you and make the argument that you're getting the right answer, you're just using a different method? The point being is, you may have the brains, the right diet, the right sleeping, the right study habits, everything, but your environment may be an enemy or a battle you cannot win. And so think of this fish that's swimming uphill, right? It's pointless. It's too much friction in your life. So I'm going to close this video out with only fight battles you can win, or attack undefended positions. Now, before I wrap up, again, this is the foreword to James Clavelle's translation of The Art of War, but we're tuning it in for math. The next video I'll cover chapter 1, but no matter what video you watch going forward, come back to these 3 principles, because all the rules, all the formulas, all the strategy essentially ties back to these 3 things. And with that, thank you for watching.